We think our homes are clean. We have sprays for every surface. We have wipes, gels, and foams. Our cupboards are full of plastic bottles promising a germ-free world. But what if we're doing it all wrong? What if the secret to a truly clean, healthy home isn't in a bottle, but buried in the past? The medieval period gets a bad rap. We picture mud, grime, and disease. And sure, some of that is true. They didn't have microbiology. They didn't understand germs, but they weren't stupid. They lived closer to the earth. They had to be resourceful. Their cleaning supplies came from the ground, from plants, and from their own kitchens. They used things we'd throw away. And in doing so, they created a system of cleaning that was effective, non-toxic, and completely biodegradable. Their solutions weren't about marketing. They were about survival. They needed to preserve food, protect textiles, and keep their homes from smelling like, well, the Middle Ages. Could it be that a 14th century peasant knew more about sustainable cleaning than we do today? Are we so obsessed with sterile environments that we've poisoned our own homes with chemicals? Maybe it's time to look back, not with nostalgia, but with curiosity. To rediscover the simple, powerful, and forgotten wisdom of a time when clean didn't come in a spray bottle. Let's see what they knew that we've forgotten. Number 18, could a handful of dirt be the ultimate scouring powder? It sounds wrong. Cleaning with dirt. But that's exactly what they did. People in the medieval period used sand. They used it for the toughest jobs. Think of a pot caked with burnt stew, or a wooden platter with grease worked into the grain. They didn't have steel wool, they didn't have powdered cleansers in a can, they had sand, and it worked. The concept is simple. Sand is abrasive. It's made of tiny hard particles, mostly silica. When you rub it on a surface, it physically scrapes away the grime. It's a mechanical process, not a chemical one. In a world without non-stick coatings, this was essential. Cast iron pots, pewter plates, and wooden trenchers were the norm. Or food stuck to them badly. A handful of coarse sand, maybe mixed with a little water or ash, was the perfect tool. You'd scrub until the burnt bits were gone, then you'd rinse. The sand did the hard work. This wasn't just for pots and pans. Sand was used to scrub floors. Many medieval homes had floors of packed earth, stone flags, or rough wood planks. Spills and mud were a constant issue. Spreading sand on the floor and then sweeping it up was a way to absorb grease and grind away dirt. It was like a medieval vacuum cleaner and floor polisher in one. You can see the logic. Sand was free. It was everywhere, it was effective, it didn't create toxic fumes. It was the definition of using your local environment to solve a problem. Historians like Joseph and Francis Gies, in their books like Life in a Medieval Village, describe the constant battle against grime. They detail how households used readily available materials. Sand was a primary weapon in that fight. Archaeological evidence supports this. Microscopic analysis of medieval pottery sometimes reveals scoring marks consistent with sand abrasion. It wasn't a gentle process, it would have scratched the surfaces, but that was a small price to pay for a clean pot. The modern parallel is obvious. Think about products like Comet or Ajax. Their main ingredient is often a powdered abrasive like calcium carbonate or silica, the very same component of sand. We just package it, add some bleach and fragrance, and sell it back to ourselves. We pay for a processed version of what they scooped up for free. It makes you wonder what else we're overcomplicating. The use of sand was a testament to practicality. It didn't need a label with a long list of unpronounceable chemicals. It just needed to work. And it did, but what don't we know? Did they have a preferred type of sand, like river sand over beach sand, for specific tasks? How did they dispose of the greasy, dirty sand without creating a new mess outside their door? And did the constant scratching from sand cleaning create microscopic grooves in their cookware that actually harbored more bacteria over time? Number 17 was sour wine, the original all-purpose cleaner. Imagine you're a medieval housewife. You have a barrel of wine or ale for your family. It's a staple, safer than the water, but sometimes a batch goes wrong. It gets exposed to the air. Acidobacter, a common bacteria, gets in and starts converting the alcohol into acetic acid. Your wine turns to vinegar. Is it a disaster? No. It's a cleaning supply. Vinegar was the medieval equivalent of a multi-surface spray. Its power lies in its acidity. Acetic acid is great at cutting through grease and dissolving mineral deposits. Think about the greasy film on a pewter tankard or the grime on a window pane if you were wealthy enough to have one. A rag dipped in vinegar would cut right through it. They wouldn't have known the chemistry, of course. They just knew that sour wine worked. They learned through observation and passed the knowledge down. Its use was widespread. Vinegar was used to clean and deodorize. A wipe down with vinegar could help reduce the smell of stale food or a smoky room. It was a disinfectant too. While they didn't understand germ theory, they likely noticed that things cleaned with vinegar seemed to stay fresher longer. The famous legend of the Four Thieves vinegar, while dating to the time of the plague in the 17th or 18th century, builds on this long-held belief. The story goes that a group of thieves robbed plague victims without getting sick themselves. When caught, they revealed their secret, a concoction of vinegar infused with herbs like rosemary, sage, and garlic. Whether the story is true or not, it points to a deep-rooted cultural understanding of vinegar as a protective and cleansing agent. The Roman army knew it well. They drank a diluted vinegar drink called pasca. It was cheap, refreshing, and the acetic acid likely helped kill bacteria in questionable water sources. This tradition of using vinegar wasn't new to the medieval period. It was ancient wisdom they continued. In the home, it was invaluable. It could be used to clean metal, removing tarnish from brass or copper. It could be used to wipe down wooden tables and benches. Mixed with water, it made a rinse for laundry that could help brighten colors and soften fabrics. And we see this today. Natural cleaning websites are filled with uses for white distilled vinegar. We use it to clean our coffee makers, our windows, and our floors. We're essentially rediscovering what a medieval peasant knew out of necessity. They didn't have a separate cleaner for the kitchen, the bathroom, and the windows. They had vinegar. It was simple, it was effective. And when your beverage went bad, it gained a second life. But what specific strengths of vinegar did they prefer for different tasks? Did they intentionally spoil wine to create cleaning supplies? And without modern distillation, how much did the effectiveness of their vinegar vary from batch to batch? And did they have ways to test its strength? Number 16. Did they really wash their clothes with human pee? Yes, they did. It sounds disgusting to us now, but it was a common and effective practice. The key ingredient in stale urine is ammonia. As urine sits for a few weeks, urea, a chemical compound, breaks down into ammonia. Ammonia is a powerful cleaning agent. It's an alkaline solution that is fantastic at cutting through grease and dirt. It was also a whitening agent. The Romans famously used urine to clean their togas. They had public collection pots called fulwones where people could relieve themselves. The collected urine was then taken to laundries. This practice didn't just disappear after the Roman Empire fell. Throughout the medieval period, urine, often called lant, was a valuable resource for cleaning textiles. It was especially important for the wool industry. Wool comes off the sheep full of grease, dirt, and lanolin. To prepare it for spinning and dyeing, this grease had to be removed. Soaking the wool in a vat of stale urine was one of the most effective ways to do this. The ammonia would strip the grease, leaving the wool clean and ready for the next step. This process was called fulling, but it wasn't just for industrial use. In the household, a chamber pot of aged urine could be added to the wash water. It acted as a primitive laundry booster. It helped lift stubborn stains and whiten linens. Remember, they didn't have commercial detergents. Their soaps were harsh and not always effective on heavy grease. Urine was a free and readily available chemical that did the job. The social historian Terry Jones, in his book Terry Jones's Medieval Lives, goes to great lengths to demystify this period. He explains that things we find repulsive were often just practical solutions to everyday problems. Urine, as a cleaning agent, is a prime example. We recoil at the thought, but to them, it was just chemistry in action. They didn't have the luxury of being squeamish. They had a problem: dirty, greasy clothes, and urine was the solution. Today, ammonia is still a key ingredient in many household cleaners, especially glass cleaner and heavy-duty degreasers. We've just synthesized it in a lab and put it in a spray bottle. We've removed the ick factor, but the core chemical doing the work is the same. The medieval launderer was, in a way, a practical chemist, using a biological process to create a powerful cleaning agent. But how did they manage the overpowering smell of ammonia during the washing process? Were there specific herbs or methods they used to mask the odor on the final clothes? And was there a social stigma attached to being a fuller, someone who worked with vats of stale urine all day long? Number 15, could your living room carpet actually be a compost heap? We think of carpets as a sign of comfort and cleanliness. In the medieval period, the floor covering of choice for many was something very different rushes. And they weren't always clean. Floors in many homes were cold, damp, and dirty. They were often made of packed earth or rough stone. To make them more comfortable and a bit cleaner, people would spread fresh rushes, herbs, and straw on the floor. This practice was called strewing. The idea was to create a disposable layer between your feet and the floor. When it was fresh, it smelled good. Herbs like lavender, chamomile, and meadowsweet would be mixed in to release a pleasant scent when walked on. It insulated the floor, making it warmer in the winter. It also absorbed spills and mess. It was, in theory, a great idea. The problem was what happened next. Instead of regularly removing the old layer of rushes, people often just threw a new layer on top. The Dutch scholar and humanist Erasmus of Rotterdam wrote about this in the early 16th century, complaining about the state of English floors. He described layers of rushes that had been there for 20 years. The bottom layer was a vile mix of spittings, vomitings, the leakage of dogs and men, ale droppings, scraps of fish, and other abominations not fit to be mentioned. This created a damp, rotting mat that was a perfect breeding ground for fleas, lice, and bacteria. It was a compost heap in the living room. While Erasmus was writing at the tail end of the period, his observations reflect a long-standing practice. The intention was good. It was an attempt to manage household waste and add comfort. The execution, however, was often flawed. In wealthier homes, the rushes might be changed more frequently. But for many, it was an annual or semi-annual event. When they finally did clean it out, it would have been a massive, disgusting job. The collected waste, however, wasn't just thrown out. It would likely have been added to the household's dung heap, to eventually be used as fertilizer on the garden. It was part of a cycle. Everything was reused. Nothing was truly wasted, not even the filth from the floor. This is a stark contrast to our modern approach. We vacuum our carpets to remove dirt, which we then seal in a plastic bag and send to a landfill. The medieval approach, for all its unsanitary flaws, was circular. The mess from the house fed the garden that fed the house. It's a challenging idea. It forces us to confront our own ideas of what clean means. Is it a sterile, chemical smelling environment, or is it a managed, living ecosystem? But did people get sick more often from these floors, and did they make the connection? Were there specific types of rushes or herbs known to repel pests better than others? And how did they manage the transition when it was time for a great clean out of the old, rotten layers? Number 14, how did they polish metal with a prehistoric plant? Imagine needing to polish a pewter plate or a knight's armor. You don't have metal polish. You don't have microfiber cloths. You go outside and pick a weed. Specifically, you'd look for horsetail. Horsetail, or Equisetum arvens, is a fascinating plant. It's a living fossil, a descendant of giant plants that dominated the landscape during the Paleozoic era, long before the dinosaurs. Its secret lies in its biology. The plant absorbs silica from the soil and deposits it in its cells. This makes the stems and leaves incredibly abrasive, like a fine grit sandpaper. The silica content can be as high as 10% of the plant's dry weight. People in the medieval period knew this. They would gather bundles of horsetail, let them dry, and then use them as scouring rushes. They were perfect for polishing soft metals like pewter and tin, as well as wood and even ivory. The fine silica particles would rub away tarnish and grime, leaving a smooth, polished surface. It was gentle enough not to leave deep scratches, but tough enough to get the job done. The 12th century abbess and naturalist Hildegard of Bingen wrote extensively about the properties of plants. While her focus was often medicinal, this kind of practical, everyday knowledge of local flora was common. People had an intimate relationship with the plants around them. They knew which ones could heal you, which could poison you, and which could polish your spoons. This was folk knowledge passed down from generation to generation. Using horsetail was cheap, effective, and sustainable. When your scouring rush wore out, you just threw it on the compost heap and went to pick another one. Compare this to modern metal polishes. They contain chemical abrasive solvents and petroleum distillates. They come in plastic tubes and have warning labels about ventilation. The medieval solution was a plant. It required no manufacturing, no packaging, and no warning labels. It was a perfect example of biomimicry, using a natural design to solve a human problem. Even the name in many languages reflects this use. In German, it's Zinkkraut, which means tin herb. This direct link between the plant's name and its function shows how integral it was to daily life. It wasn't an obscure trick. It was common knowledge. But did they understand that it was the silica in the plant doing the work, or did they attribute its power to something else? Were there specific techniques for drying and preparing the horsetail to maximize its polishing ability? Did overharvesting of horsetail for cleaning ever become an issue in certain areas? Number 13, could a pile of fireplace soot make your silver shine? After a long winter of keeping the fire going for warmth and cooking, a medieval home would have a good supply of one thing wood ash. Most of it would be used to make lye for soap or spread on the garden as fertilizer. But the fine, black, greasy soot that collected in the chimney had a different, more surprising use. It was an excellent silver polish. This seems counterintuitive. How can something so black and dirty make something clean and bright? The answer is in its composition. Wood soot is made of very fine carbon particles. This carbon in this form is a very mild abrasive. When mixed with a little water or oil to form a paste, it could be rubbed onto tarnished silver. The tarnish on silver is silver sulfide, a blackish layer that forms when silver reacts with sulfur compounds in the air. The gentle abrasion of the carbon particles would physically rub off the silver sulfide layer without scratching the soft silver underneath. After rubbing with the soot paste, the object would be wiped clean and buffed with a soft cloth. The result would be gleaming, bright silver. This was a technique likely used in wealthier households, monasteries, and churches, places that actually had silver to polish. A book of household management from the late medieval period, such as Le Ménagère de Paris, The Goodman of Paris, written in the 1390s, offers advice on all sorts of domestic tasks. While it might not explicitly mention soot for silver, it's filled with the kind of practical, resourceful tips that were the bedrock of medieval housekeeping. Using a waste product from the fire to restore a valuable item fits perfectly with the medieval mindset of thrift and resourcefulness. Today we buy special silver polishing cloths and chemical creams. Many of these work in a similar way, using a very fine abrasive like silica or diatomaceous earth suspended in a chemical paste. The medieval method simply used a different readily available abrasive. It was a closed-loop system. The wood that cooked the food and warmed the house also provided the material to clean the dishes. There was no waste. It's a powerful idea. The solution to one problem, tarnished silver, was a byproduct of solving another problem, staying warm. But did they know to use only soot from certain types of wood? Did the soot from pine, with its high resin content, work differently than soot from oak? And how did they manage the incredible mess of working with a fine black powder without staining everything else in the process? Number 12. Why was a block of animal fat the greatest invention in household cleaning? For most of human history, cleaning was done with water, abrasives like sand, and acidic things like vinegar. The big game changer was soap, and medieval soap was not the fragrant, gentle bar you have by your sink. It was a harsh, powerful block of cleaning potential made from two simple ingredients, animal fat and lye. Lye is a strong alkali, a chemical called potassium hydroxide. In the medieval period, it was made by a simple but dangerous process. You would take wood ashes, put them in a barrel with a hole in the bottom, and slowly pour water through them. The water would leach the potassium salts from the ash, and the liquid that dripped out was lye. The strength could be tested by seeing if an egg would float in it. This lye was then boiled with rendered animal fat tallow from cows or sheep, or lard from pigs. This process is called saponification. The alkali breaks down the fat molecules, triglycerides, into their component parts, fatty acids, and glycerol. The fatty acid salts are what we call soap. A soap molecule has a special structure. One end is hydrophilic, meaning it loves water. The other end is hydrophobic, meaning it hates water but loves oil and grease. When you wash with soap, the hydrophobic ends stick to the greasy dirt on your hands or clothes, surrounding it to form a little ball called a micelle. The hydrophilic ends face outward, allowing the whole micelle, with the dirt trapped inside, to be washed away by water. It's a brilliant piece of molecular engineering. Soap making was a common household chore, but it also became a specialized trade. By the 12th and 13th centuries, soap-making guilds were established in cities across Europe, like Marseille and Venice. They produced soap on a larger scale, sometimes using olive oil instead of animal fat, which created a higher quality soap known as Castile soap. This lye soap was a true all-purpose cleaner. It was used for laundry, for washing floors, and for personal hygiene. It would have been harsh on the skin, stripping away natural oils, but it was incredibly effective at removing dirt and grease. It represented a major leap forward in hygiene. The ability to emulsify and remove fats fundamentally changed how clean a person or a home could be. It was a chemical revolution that happened right in the kitchen hearth. But how do they safely handle lye, a highly caustic substance that can cause severe chemical burns? Without precise measurements, how did they avoid making soap that was lye-heavy and dangerously corrosive? And was there a black market for high-quality ash from specific woods known to produce the strongest lye? Number 11. Could sunlight be the most powerful bleach in the world? Long before chemical bleaches were invented, people knew about the power of the sun. Sunlight isn't just for warmth and light, it's a powerful bleaching and disinfecting agent. The magic ingredient is ultraviolet UV radiation. When UV rays from the sun hit wet fabric, they trigger a chemical reaction. The energy from the UV light breaks down the chemical bonds in the molecules that cause color. A process called photogradation effectively fades, stains, and whitens the fabric. Medieval households used this principle all the time. After washing their linen sheets, shirts, and undergarments made from linen or hemp, they wouldn't just hang them to dry. They would spread them out in a field, a process known as bleaching or crofting. They would lay the wet fabric flat on the grass for days, even weeks. They would re-wet it periodically with water to keep the chemical reaction going. The combination of sunlight, oxygen in the air, and the moisture on the fabric worked together to break down stains and lighten the natural beige color of the linen to a bright white. A field of bleaching linens was a common sight outside a village or a monastery. It was a slow, laborious process that required a lot of space and good weather, but it was effective, free, and didn't damage the fabric fibers like harsh chemical bleaches can. The sun's UV rays are also a potent disinfectant. They destroy bacteria, viruses, and mold spores by damaging their DNA, rendering them unable to reproduce. Laying bedding, blankets, and other textiles out in the sun was a simple and effective way to kill pests like lice and fleas and to get rid of musty smells. We still recognize this today. There's a reason why clothes dried on an outdoor line have a unique, fresh smell. Part of that is the sun killing off odor, causing bacteria. Institutions like the Beguinages of Flanders, which were communities of religious women starting in the 13th century, were known for their laundry and textile work. Their bleach fields would have been an essential part of their operations, a testament to the industrial scale this solar-powered technology could reach. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful tools are the ones that are all around us, freely available. We've just forgotten how to use them. But did they know that cloudy days still provided some UV benefit? Or did they only bleach on perfectly sunny days? How did they protect the bleaching fields from animals walking over and soiling the precious linens? And did certain types of grass or soil enhance the bleaching effect, perhaps by reflecting more light or releasing natural bleaching agents? Number 10 was a pungent herb, the first air freshener. Before air freshener sprays, plug-ins, and scented candles, there was a simpler solution to a smelly home: strewing herbs. This was the practice of scattering fragrant herbs and flowers on the floor, along with the rushes. As people walked on them, the plants would be crushed, releasing their essential oils and perfuming the air. It was a practical and sensory experience. The choice of herbs wasn't random. They chose plants known for their strong, pleasant scents. Lavender, chamomile, mint, rosemary, meadowsweet, and hyssop were popular choices. These herbs didn't just smell good, many of them had other properties. Mint and pennyroyal were known to repel fleas and other insects. Rosemary was believed to have antiseptic qualities and was often burned in sick rooms to purify the air. This practice is documented in many historical accounts. Thomas Tusser, a 16th century English farmer and writer, listed dozens of strewing herbs in his book, 100 Good Points of Husbandry. His lists show the depth of knowledge people had about the properties of local plants. Strewing herbs were part of a larger strategy to manage the smells of medieval life. In a world without modern plumbing and refrigeration, bad smells were a constant presence. These herbs helped to mask the odors of smoke, cooking, unwashed bodies, and the floor rushes themselves. It was a form of aromatic camouflage. This practice wasn't just for the floor. Small cloth bags filled with dried herbs, known as pomanders or sachets, were carried or hung in rooms and closets to keep things smelling fresh. Bundles of herbs, called Tussiums might be carried to sniff when walking through a particularly smelly street. This use of scent was a way of controlling one's personal environment. It wasn't about eliminating bad smells at the source, which was often impossible, but about overlaying them with something more pleasant. It highlights a different relationship with scent. We try to create a neutral or artificially scented environment. They lived in a world of strong organic smells, and they managed it by adding more natural smells to the mix. It was a battle of scents, and herbs were their primary weapon. But was there a hierarchy of herbs, with more expensive or potent ones used only by the wealthy? How did they preserve herbs gathered in the summer to be used for strewing in the dead of winter? And did people ever suffer from allergic reactions to the constant presence of crushed plant matter and pollen in their homes? Number 9, could a bowl of cereal chaff wash your hands? We wash our hands with soap and water. In the medieval period, soap was a valuable commodity, not always used for something as frequent as hand washing. For a simple everyday clean, especially before and after meals, people often use something else bran. Bran is the hard outer layer of a cereal grain like wheat, oats, or rye. It's a byproduct of milling flour. When you grind grain to make white flour, you sift out the bran. To a medieval household, this wasn't waste. It was a useful substance. Bran is absorbent and slightly abrasive. A bowl of warm water with a handful of bran thrown in was a common sight at the dinner table. You would dip your hands in the water and then scrub them with the wet bran. The bran would help to absorb grease, and the gentle scouring action would remove dirt. It was a mild and effective way to clean your hands without using up precious soap. This practice is mentioned in various household manuals and etiquette guides from the period. For instance, the concept of hand washing before meals was very important as most people ate with their hands. A servant would bring a basin of water, an ewer, and a towel, and sometimes this water would be infused with bran or fragrant herbs. The use of bran extended beyond hand washing. It could be used as a facial scrub, a gentle exfoliant to remove dead skin. It was also used in the laundry process. Sometimes bran was boiled in water, and the resulting starchy liquid was used to stiffen linens, much like modern starch. The leftover bran itself could be used to rub on grease spots on clothing, absorbing the oil before washing. This speaks to a mindset of total resourcefulness. Nothing was single use. The grain that made your bread also provided the scrub to wash your hands. Every part of a resource was considered and put to use. It's the complete opposite of our modern linear system of produce, consume, and discard. They lived in a circular economy out of necessity. Today, bran and oat scrubs are sold as high-end beauty products. We pay a premium for natural exfoliants made from the very thing a medieval peasant would have considered a common, everyday cleaning supply. But did the type of bran matter? Was wheat bran better for greasy hands than oat bran? Did they ever mix the bran with other things like sand or ash for a tougher scrub? And how did they store the bran to keep it from going rancid or getting infested with insects? Number 8, why was whitewash the ultimate smart paint? Painting your walls seems like a modern decorative choice, but in the medieval period, coating walls with a specific substance was a matter of public health. That substance was lime wash, also known as whitewash. Lime wash is made from slaked lime, calcium hydroxide, and water. Sometimes chalk or other pigments were added. When you paint it on a surface, it's a watery, translucent liquid. But as it dries, it reacts with carbon dioxide in the air to form calcium carbonate, or limestone. It essentially turns back into a thin layer of rock on your wall. This had several huge benefits. First, it was bright white. In dark, smoky homes with small windows, a coat of lime wash on the interior walls and ceilings would dramatically increase the amount of light in a room. It made spaces feel bigger, cleaner, and brighter. Second, and most importantly, lime wash is a natural disinfectant. The slaked lime is highly alkaline, with a pH of around 12.4. This high pH makes it incredibly difficult for bacteria, mold, and mildew to grow. A fresh coat of lime wash would effectively sterilize a surface. It was a way to clean the very structure of the house. Public authorities and landlords often mandated the regular whitewashing of buildings, especially in crowded towns, to help prevent the spread of disease. After a sickness in a house, one of the first things people would do is give the walls a fresh coat of lime wash. It was the medieval equivalent of deep cleaning with bleach. The 14th century Assize of Nuisance in London recorded various public health orders, and rules about cleanliness, including the disposal of waste, were common. While specific lime wash mandates are harder to pinpoint for the entire period, the practice was widespread due to its known benefits. It was breathable, allowing moisture to evaporate from the walls, which was important for the walls, and it was cheap. Lime could be produced by burning limestone, chalk, or even seashells in a kiln, a technology known since Roman times. It was a simple, affordable, and highly effective way to improve both the aesthetics and the hygiene of a home. But did they understand the chemical reason it killed germs, or did they just associate the clean look and smell with health? How often did a typical household need to reapply the lime wash to maintain its disinfectant properties? And did the constant flaking of the lime wash create a dusty indoor environment that caused other health problems? Number 7, how did beating a rug become a form of pest control? In wealthier medieval households that could afford woven textiles like tapestries and rugs, keeping them clean was a major challenge. These items were thick, heavy, and incredibly valuable. You couldn't just throw them in the wash. The primary method for cleaning them was simple and violent: you beat them. The rug or tapestry would be hung over a line or a wall, and then servants would hit it repeatedly with a tool called a rug beater, which was often made of wicker, wood, or twisted wire. The goal was to physically knock the dust, dirt, and grit out of the fibers. It was a cloud-producing, labor-intensive job, but it was about more than just dust. This regular beating served a crucial role in pest control. Woolen textiles were a perfect home for moths, whose larvae would eat the fibers and destroy the fabric. They were also ideal for fleas, lice, and their eggs. The physical shock of the beating would dislodge these insects and their larvae, sending them falling to the ground. Taking the textiles outside and beating them in the bright sunlight added another layer of defense. As we've seen, sunlight's UV rays are a powerful disinfectant and can kill pests and their eggs. This combination of physical force and solar radiation was their best defense against infestations that could ruin a costly investment. This process is a great example of a non-chemical solution to a common problem. We now use chemical mothballs, naphthalene or paradichlorobenzene or pesticide sprays. These chemicals are toxic and can linger in our homes. The medieval method was purely mechanical and environmental. It required human energy, not a chemical factory. This is a recurring theme. Their solutions were often based on labor and an understanding of the natural world, while ours are often based on convenience and complex chemistry. The image of a servant beating a rug is a classic one, but it's important to see it not just as cleaning, but as preventative maintenance and integrated pest management. But did they have specific seasons or times of the year that were considered best for this de-infesting process? Were certain designs of rug beaters known to be more effective than others? And what did they do about the cloud of dust and pests that was knocked out? Did they try to contain it or just let it settle elsewhere? Number 6, could boiling water be the most underrated cleaning tool? It's the simplest cleaning supply imaginable: hot water. We take it for granted, turning a tap to get a steaming flow. But for a medieval household, getting a large quantity of boiling water was a major effort. It meant hauling water from a well or river and heating it over a fire. It was a valuable resource, and they used it wisely. The power of boiling water is its heat. At 100 degrees Celsius, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, water is hot enough to kill most bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens. It's a thermal sterilizer. This was its most important function. While they didn't know about microbes, they knew from experience that using boiling water for certain tasks led to better outcomes. For instance, in food preparation, rinsing wooden trenchers or cooking utensils with boiling water could help prevent food from spoiling as quickly. In medicine, it was used to clean wounds and sterilize instruments. The 14th century surgeon Guy de Chauliac, in his influential work Chirurgia Magna, advocated for cleanliness in surgery, and while his methods were primitive by our standards, the use of boiling wine or water to clean wounds was a step in the right direction. Boiling water is also a fantastic solvent. It melts fats and grease, making it much easier to clean oily pots and pans. For laundry, especially for heavily soiled or greasy items, washing in hot water was far more effective than washing in cold. The heat helped the soap to work better and loosen the grip of the grime on the fabric fibers. It was the medieval equivalent of the hot cycle on your washing machine. The effort required to produce boiling water meant it wasn't used frivolously. But for tasks that required true deep cleaning or disinfection, it was the go-to solution. It was pure, effective, and left no residue. It was the brute force method of cleaning, relying on the raw power of thermal energy to get the job done. But how did they handle large vats of boiling water without getting severely burned? Did they have specific tools or techniques for this? Was water from a certain source, like a river versus a well, considered better for boiling and cleaning? And did they ever infuse the boiling water with herbs to add scent or supposed disinfectant properties to the steam? Number 5, what did they use before sponges and paper towels? In a world without disposable paper towels or synthetic sponges, what did people use for wiping up spills and scrubbing dishes? One common answer was cloth, but not just any cloth. They used rags. This might sound obvious, but the rag system was a vital part of the household economy. Nothing was thrown away. When a piece of clothing, a sheet, or a sack became too worn out to be patched or repaired anymore, it began a second life as a cleaning rag. An old linen shirt, soft from years of washing, became the perfect cloth for polishing pewter. A rough piece of burlap from a grain sack was ideal for scrubbing a muddy floor. These rags were sorted and used for different tasks. They were a reusable, graded system of cleaning cloths. When a rag became too dirty to be useful, it wasn't just tossed out, it would be washed. A pot of boiling water and some harsh lye, soap would be used to clean the cleaning cloths themselves. They would be used over and over again until they literally fell apart, and even then, the story wasn't over. The final, tattered remnants of these rags, especially linen and cotton, were the primary raw material for making paper throughout the medieval period and for centuries after. Rag pickers were a common sight, collecting old textiles to sell to paper mills. So the shirt you wore became the rag you cleaned with, which then became the paper a scholar wrote on. It was a complete, unbroken cycle. This stands in stark contrast to our use and toss culture of paper towels. The average American family can use over 100 rolls of paper towels a year, creating millions of tons of waste. The medieval rag system, born of scarcity, was inherently sustainable. It recognized the value in a material even after its primary purpose was served. It was a practical zero-waste solution that we have completely abandoned in the name of convenience. But did they have a specific system for washing the rags used for the dirtiest jobs, to keep them separate from other laundry? Was there a trade in high-quality rags for specific purposes? And did the use of old, potentially germ-laden rags contribute to the spread of illness within the household? Number 4, could a block of clay degrease your finest clothes? Imagine getting a greasy food stain on your best woolen tunic. You can't just put it in the washing machine with a stain remover. The wool is delicate and can be ruined by harsh washing. The medieval solution was a type of clay called fuller's earth. Fuller's earth is a naturally occurring clay primarily composed of aluminosilicate. It has incredible absorbent properties. It can soak up oils, greases, and certain types of pigments. The process was part of fulling, the same trade that used stale urine to clean raw wool. For finished garments, a paste of fuller's earth and water would be applied to a grease spot. As the clay dried, it would draw the grease out of the wool fibers and absorb it. Once it was completely dry, the clay would be brushed off, taking the stain with it. This was a form of dry cleaning. It allowed them to spot treat delicate or brightly colored fabrics without having to submerge the entire garment in water, which could cause shrinkage or fading. The use of fuller's earth goes back to ancient times and was a cornerstone of the European textile industry for centuries. The control of fuller's earth deposits was economically important. English towns like in one named. This method was not just for clothing. Fuller's earth could be sprinkled on greasy floors to absorb spills. It could be used to clean parchment, absorbing oils from fingerprints to prepare the surface for writing. It was a versatile, natural absorbent that solved a major problem for which there was no other good solution. Today, fuller's earth is still used in many applications. It's found in cat litter for its absorbency, in industrial settings to clean up oil spills, and in cosmetic products like facial masks to draw oil out of the skin. So we're still using this medieval clay, often without even realizing it. But how did they source and process the clay? Was it a simple matter of digging it up, or did it require refining? Did they have different grades of fuller's earth for different types of fabric? And what did they do with the used, oily clay afterward? Number 3 was beeswax, the original furniture polish. Wood was everywhere in the medieval home. Floors, tables, benches, and structural beams were all made of wood. Keeping it in good condition was important. Wood can dry out, crack, and absorb spills. The solution was a beautiful natural product, beeswax. Beeswax is a wax produced by honeybees. It's a stable, water-repellent substance. When applied to wood, it fills in the pores and creates a protective barrier. This barrier helps to prevent moisture from getting into the wood and causing it to rot. It also repels dirt and makes the surface easier to clean. Applying a beeswax polish would also give the wood a rich, low-gloss sheen, bringing out the natural beauty of the grain. The application was simple. The beeswax could be softened, sometimes by mixing it with a little oil, like linseed or olive oil, to make it easier to spread. This paste would then be rubbed into the wood with a cloth and then buffed to a shine. This wasn't just for furniture. Beeswax was used to waterproof leather shoes and coats. It was used to coat the thread, used for sewing, making it stronger and smoother. And, of course, it was the primary material for high-quality candles, especially in churches. The use of beeswax on wood was part of a holistic approach to wood care. It wasn't a separate cleaning task, but part of the maintenance that kept valuable items functional for generations. A well-cared-for wooden chest or table could last for centuries. This tradition of using beeswax and oil finishes on wood is still alive today, especially among fine woodworkers. Many people are turning away from modern polyurethane and varnish finishes, which create a plastic-like film on the wood, in favor of traditional finishes that penetrate and nourish the wood itself. It's another example of an ancient technique proving to have timeless value. But did they blend the beeswax with different types of oils for different types of wood? How did they clean the wood before applying a fresh coat of wax? And was pure beeswax so valuable for candle making that its use on furniture was a sign of significant wealth? Here's number 2. Could a foaming weed wash your silks and delicates? We've talked about harsh lye soap for general purpose cleaning. But what about delicate fabrics like silk or fine wool? Lye soap would be too aggressive. For these precious items, they turn to a plant soapwort. Soapwort, Saponaria officinalis, is a common perennial plant with pretty pink or white flowers. Its secret is in its roots and leaves. They contain natural compounds called saponins. When the plant matter is agitated in water, these saponins create a stable, foamy lather, just like soap. Saponins work in a similar way to soap molecules, with parts that attract both water and oil, allowing them to lift and remove dirt. The key difference is that soapwort creates a much milder, pH-neutral lather than lye soap. This made it the perfect choice for washing delicate textiles that could be damaged by a strong alkali. The process was simple. You would chop up the roots or leaves of the soapwort plant and boil them in water, or simply agitate them vigorously in cold water. This would create a sudsy liquid that could be used to gently wash fabrics. It was effective yet gentle, capable of cleaning without stripping dyes or damaging delicate fibers. This plant was so well known for this property that it was often called fuller's herb or lathering root. Its use is ancient, predating the medieval period, but it remained a staple in household laundry for centuries. Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century German abbess, documented the properties of hundreds of plants, and this kind of knowledge was widespread. People knew their local pharmacy and hardware store grew right outside their door. Today, saponins extracted from plants like soapwort and yucca are still used in some natural soaps, shampoos, and detergents. We're rediscovering the power of these plant-based surfactants, which are biodegradable and gentler on the environment than many synthetic detergents. The medieval laundress, using a weed from her garden to wash a lady's silk veil, was practicing a form of green chemistry we are only now starting to appreciate again. But how much soapwort did it take to wash a garment? Was it something you had to cultivate intentionally? Or was there enough growing wild? And did the soapwort leave its own scent on the fabric after washing? Number 1 was salt, the most important cleaning supply in the kitchen. Salt. Today we think of it as a simple seasoning. In the medieval world, salt was life. It was a strategic commodity as valuable as currency. Its primary role was preserving food, especially meat and fish, in a time before refrigeration. But its importance didn't end there. Salt was also a versatile and powerful cleaning agent. Salt is abrasive. A handful of coarse salt could be used to scour a greasy pot or a dirty wooden cutting board. It worked like sand, but had an added benefit. It was also antimicrobial. Salt kills many types of bacteria, molds, and yeasts through the process of osmosis. It draws the water out of the microbe cells, dehydrating and killing it. Scrubbing a surface with salt not only removed the visible grime, but also helped to sanitize it. This was incredibly important for food safety. A wooden board used to cut raw meat could be a source of contamination. Cleaning it with salt was one of the best ways to reduce that risk. Salt was also used to clean and deodorize. Spilling wine on a tablecloth was a disaster, but covering the fresh stain immediately with a pile of salt would draw the wine out of the fabric fibers, making it much easier to wash out later. A salt and water brine could be used to rinse out smelly wooden barrels or clay jars, killing the bacteria that cause the odors. Its uses were endless. It could be mixed with vinegar to make a powerful scouring paste for cleaning tarnished brass or copper. It could be used to kill weeds growing between the flagstones of a courtyard. The history of salt is a major thread in the history of civilization. The salt trade created roads and cities. The word salary comes from the Latin salarium, which was the payment given to Roman soldiers to buy salt. Its central role in the medieval kitchen was not just for flavor, but for preservation and cleanliness. It was the silent, gritty guardian against spoilage and decay. It was the simple, edible rock that made their world safer and cleaner. But did they distinguish between different types of salt, like sea salt versus rock salt, for cleaning purposes? Did the high cost of salt mean that using it for cleaning was a sign of wealth? And when they used salt to clean a cutting board, how did they rinse it sufficiently to prevent their next meal from being incredibly salty?